the gang influence and mentality to all of a sudden service to others and being exposed to faith and growing in our faith. But I found comfort in the discomfort. I found, how do I build in humanity? How do I create conversations? As long as you call it Ronald McDonald House. When you're in a good mood, you'd welcome a hug. When you're in a bad mood, you'd welcome a hug. But it's in the background, that how you carry yourself day in and day out.
Hi, I'm John Patterson, and welcome to the Driven Leader Podcast, where we talk to driven leaders, people that are driven to do more. And we define a leader as someone that is a person of influence. And we are so blessed that we have not only teammates that we talk to for internal interviews, but we also get a chance to talk to external teammates. And this one is going to be outstanding. We are so fortunate to be having Noel Burcelis that is going to be here today with us. He is the head of the Ronald McDonald House here in Orange County. And I'm so interested in our listeners learning more and more about the Ronald McDonald House, learning more about you and how they can maybe get involved in a charity that they might know a little bit or nothing about. So Noel, with that, thank you so much for taking time out of your busy schedule.
John, I am so honored to be here. You are such a force in our community for good, and to be invited to have a conversation with you, I will take it any day of the week.
Oh, thank you, my friend. That's super thoughtful. And we are both rocking our socks today.
Absolutely.
And if you see anybody with the Ronald McDonald House, our mutual friend, Wing Lamb, Charles Antis, I mean, whenever they catch me and I'm not rocking my socks, I end up having to pay Wing money. So I'm so grateful that you wore yours in and reminded me that I needed to be wearing mine. So it's always great to rock the Ronald McDonald socks.
Appreciate it.
Well, thank you. So, before we get into how the whole Ronald McDonald process works here in Orange County and all throughout the United States, tell us a little bit about yourself, you, your family, kind of how you got to this space.
So born in the Philippines, came to this country when I was 3 years old, and I grew up in a rough part of LA.
Okay.
And I share all that because it really helped form as far as my life. And so there was that many Asian folks in the community I grew up. It's Pico Union for those who are in the LA area, your
Sure.
listeners on that, and just east of that. But it was that experience for me, where the derogatory stuff of being Asian that influenced my life of service. So for us, because of the neighborhood that we grew up in and how what we were going through, and we started to, as far as the two gangs that in our neighborhood, it started to influence my older brother and I. And the Catholic priest basically told my parents, you got to take them out of the neighborhood, right? And sent us to a private school out in the valley.
Okay.
Queen of Angels Seminary is no longer there. It's right behind the mission.
Okay.
And the idea is you're there, you're staying there from Sunday night to Friday, right?
Wow.
So you're out of the neighborhood coming back in. And it really was that intervention for our family, for my brother and I, that changed the trajectory of our life. So going from the gang influence and mentality to all of a sudden service to others and being exposed to, to faith and growing in our faith, led us to both being social workers, right? Giving back. And so again, being mindful of, wow, look at that domino effect, that if that priest didn't do, where would we be, right?
Absolutely. That's a God thing right there. You're the priest intervening with your family and saying, hey, right place, right time. What was the difference in age between you and your brother, and how old were you when you went off to, weekly boarding school?
So we're 7 years apart.
Okay.
And what we started to see, when your brother starts to tag your own house, like in the closet, and he's tagging it and things like that, we're like, you know what, this might not be a good thing.
Right.
And so it was for him, both of us, it was high school.
Yeah.
So when he hit high school, they sent him off. And then when I hit high school, so freshman year, I was community high school, and sophomore to senior year, I was sent off to Queen of Angels. Yeah. What I liked about it was, hey, it's kind of military, right? So I like, hey, they wear uniforms.
Yeah.
Right. And then when I looked at the setup, I'm like, they're like not bunk beds, but, it's dormitory style.
Sure.
So in my head, I was like, I can get this. I'm into military. This is that piece. I never thought about thinking of the priesthood faith piece, right? Yeah. So I was just kind of locked into, hey, this is different. It's kind of cool. And then eventually it started to think about, hey, do I have a calling, right? So I actually thought about being a priest, and then I went to St. John's Seminary College in Camarillo for 2 years.
Okay.
Thinking, do I have a vocation of priesthood?
Right.
So it did influence me, and critical time in my life and my brother's life, high school, right? As to your values, right?
Without
I
a
mean,
doubt.
it's like your formative years of what person am I going to be, right?
Mhm.
How am I going to behave?
Yeah.
So that was, again, a really game changer for us. So it was high school. Yeah.
That's amazing. How many conversations have I had with you and I had no idea,
Right.
but what an amazing life change and
Mm.
how one conversation with your folks can change the trajectory of your life and your brother's lives. And so now let's talk about, okay, so you talked about social work. So walk
Mm.
me through how what could have been becoming a priest turns into a social work
Mm.
space.
So with that, my brother got into the profession first. So he got his undergrad and his graduate studies in social work. And he started his career with in fact, he's still there with LA County Child Protective Services
Wow.
in adoptions. And he's been there, I think, over 35 years.
Holy smokes.
Yeah.
Talk about the change. From tagging in your own closet to
The gang mentality to what? You're not working with abused children and looking to provide them a stability in their life. And I followed suit. We have very similar interests. And so I got my undergrad and graduate in social work as well.
Mhm.
My brother, I started with LA County Child Protective Services in the Lakewood office. So the Compton, the like South Bay areas
Yeah.
are, and I thought I was going to make a career out of it.
Yeah.
I had no other plans in life other than I want to make a difference this way, right? And life kind of takes you on a different journey. So it was LA County. The YMCA in Long Beach was launching a juvenile crime prevention program, and it was one of 12 programs in the state of California they were going to pilot.
Okay.
Does prevention work
Yeah.
versus intervention, right?
Okay.
Because they're thinking we save the monies that you can save and all that stuff. So it was state of California investing in that study
Gotcha.
for 5 years, multi-million. It was a collaborative of over 20 nonprofits in, I should say 20 agencies in Long Beach.
Okay.
And they focused on the highest risk area. And
Okay.
at that time, it was 90813 in Long Beach, highest teen pregnancy, highest juvenile delinquency rate. And so that was our work. And so the pattern in my life was always working with youth
Yeah.
and at-risk youth, right? So I went from
Sure.
the county child protective services, now juvenile crime prevention program. And then that spun off a few other initiatives, all working with youth, right? There's a community school concept that came out of that to just say, hey, in New York Children's Aid Society, where the school doesn't close at 2:30,
Yeah.
they stay open, and you have workshops and ESL classes and folklorical classes, all these. Some of them have medical and dental on site. Instead
Okay.
of building more facilities, you have schools in every community. Why don't you just use the schools?
Make the most out of what you already have.
Maximize their space, the community school initiative, and a few others that came from that.
Gotcha.
And then from there, after the Y, I worked with Adult Day Healthcare Center for
Okay.
developmentally disabled adults.
Okay.
And they had 1 to 2-year-old mentality and all medical fragile, right? So there's G-tubes, they're nonverbals, they're non-ambulatory. And I spent 5 or 6 years as a director of an adult day healthcare center serving that.
Holy smokes.
One of the challenges there, John, was questions posed to me as, Noel, you've got your master's in social work, right? You've got nonverbal folks you're working with, and their mentality is 1 to 2-year-old. How are you using your education, right? Is that a good use of your clinical skills? What difference are you making, right? I mean, that is some rough stuff. Good point, right? And so, are you maximizing your skill sets, your education in that environment? And I will tell you, I walked away deeper understanding, and at my core, John, I asked those questions. Am I wasting my time? What difference am I making with this population, right? And what I discovered was real deep questions like, is a human being, are their value based on what they can produce? Or basically, they're a child of God. You treat them, and by that nature, whether they have value, right?
Yeah.
And so what I learned, a critical skill was, for those who are nonverbal, I would actually have conversations with them, right? And I'm asking, hey, what are we gonna have for lunch? And whether they're responding or not, I'm like, I'm going to look it up. And instead of their G-tube, instead of just whatever they're thinking, I'm saying it's enchilada today. And I would just change it up. But I found comfort in the discomfort. I found, how do I build in humanity? How do I create conversations?
Yeah.
Because they might be able to take in what I'm saying. Just because they can't speak, that doesn't mean.
For sure. Do
Right?
not assume that they're not there.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's so important.
Yeah.
And so for you, this in the book Good to Great, they talk about getting the right people on the bus and making sure that the right people on the bus are in the right seats on the bus, right? So in essence, I think that that's what a lot of your friends and colleagues are saying. Okay, is this the right seat on the bus for you? And
Yeah.
maybe at the time it was, and you learned a whole lot, but ultimately that led you to the right seat on the bus, which is where you are right now.
Yeah. I thought it was a good, really a good combination of things. I was always wanting to focus with youth,
Mhm.
and I got the exposure of those who are medically fragile.
Yeah,
And the Ronald McDonald House is that combination
absolutely.
of children who have some seriously, they're critically ill and have serious conditions, health conditions. And I thought it was just really a great match for me, right? It was
So how long have you been with the Ronald McDonald organization then?
14 years.
14 years.
2011 is when I
Wow.
started.
So from anybody listening, right? So kind of let's digest this
Yeah.
from not the easiest place to grow up in Los Angeles
Right.
to taking out of that situation, going into social work, then working with troubled youth, then working with mentally challenged folks
Yes.
and nonverbal, and now really the culmination of all of that experience has led you to the Ronald McDonald House, which is I think would use all of those skills all in one place.
One of the toughest questions you can ask me in any interview, if a job interview,
Yeah.
is, where do you see yourself 5 years from
Yeah.
now, right? That's always a rough one because I never planned my career, right? As you've heard, as far as my faith,
Mhm.
and I feel where I'm called. Like,
Yeah.
God, that's generally my premise is like, God, what do you want me to do, right?
Yeah.
And that's whole surrender piece. And it's that I think all those experiences prepared me from where I'm at now, right? With the intensity, with the families that they're going through, how I had to develop my character and ask those questions as far as growing up, who the man am I going to be? How do I value people? All that, to your point, that the culmination of those experiences, I think, better prepared me to the position I'm in.
So I think many of us have a rough idea as to what the Ronald McDonald House is all about. But why don't you, for those that are a little bit uncertain or kind of understanding, let's talk about exactly how the Ronald McDonald House got founded and why it is what it is today and how it's grown.
Your listeners, particularly in Southern Cal, should really be proud because the family that inspired the charity is from Orange County, right? So you got Fred and Fran Hill. Fred went to USC, plays football, and he gets recruited by Philadelphia Eagles.
That's right.
The Raiders also recruited him, but then he ended up selecting. So Fred reminds me about that. It's like, it wasn't just one. There was actually, and it was there when he was playing that his daughter, Kim, was diagnosed with leukemia. She was 3 years old and given a few weeks to live. Right. And it was that family's journey of nowhere to stay, sleeping in the hospital, in the cafeteria, eating in the cafeteria, that inspired the first house to be built in Philly 50 years ago. Right.
50
Right.
years
And
ago.
so good news is that Kim surpassed a few weeks. She lived to she was 41. We lost her in 2011. And she was known to share that even though she didn't like being sick, she wouldn't do anything differently, knowing the difference her life has made. And the difference her life has made is there are now 395 Ronald McDonald houses around the world. So you're talking about one family, global difference, right? Just so for us in Orange County, our house is 35 years old. So we celebrated 35th year anniversary. And this family, right? Just talking about global impact, what difference their life has made. So.
And we'll talk about your specific facility here shortly.
Yeah.
What's the Ronald McDonald tie-in, the McDonald piece to this? Because people are like, yeah, Ronald McDonald House helps families, kids sick. How did Ronald McDonald House even become part of it?
Yeah, so that was the first house, and what you'll see the model is really followed that if you talk about the stool, the three pieces was always Children's Hospital. The first few houses, I think the first 10 or 15 houses, it was NFL, a Children's Hospital, and McDonald's. And how McDonald's came in when they were trying to get funds for the first house.
Mm-hmm.
the thought was, why don't we give some proceeds of the Shamrock Shake?
Oh, yeah, that's right.
Right? So,
By the way, I'm a big fan of Shamrock Shakes.
okay.
Okay, there you go.
So then and of course, hey, the proceeds, and then I know the discussion, Fred is so much better
Yeah.
at sharing this story where then they realized the person that they're talking to, like, is he in the position to make that call? Make that, and he did, right? And so they took him on it, and with one condition, they said, "So we'll give you the proceeds of certain proceeds of the Shamrock Shake as long as you call it Ronald McDonald House."
Love it.
And so the response was, "We'll call it Hamburger Heaven, whatever you want to call it. We'll take your money," right? So it was really that initial one, and they maintained that model. And I will tell you that the thought from some folks were, this model isn't going to last, right? Because you're providing housing and food for families and you're not charging them. That's not going to work, right? What they underestimated is the power of community, right? And so when we talk about funding, for us in OC, 80 to 85% comes from the community, right?
Love it.
So that was what was overlooked is how the community is going to gather to support those in need. So that's the house, and that's a McDonald's connection to it, right?
So often difficult for us to paint a exact picture of when we walk into the facility in Orange County, which is adjacent to Chalk Hospital, that
Yeah.
serves so many children and family from, all across the United States, right?
Yes.
But I know that I'm always awestruck when I walk in and think, goodness gracious, this is a nice hotel, the environment. So walk our listeners through what to expect when they walk into your facility.
John, that's again, people might hear about the Ronald McDonald House, right? But when you ask the general community out there, what do we do, right? There's not so sure, not so strong, right? I see the coin box, I see the roundup,
Yeah.
at McDonald's, but we're literally actually a house, and that we provide families that have seriously ill children a place to stay, because we believe that healing comes in different forms, and it's not only in medication and surgeries, right? Families who stay close to the loved ones, healing happens that way as well. And so the idea is keep families close. So if you could imagine, a child has to be in the hospital for 2 months. I live 40 miles away.
Yeah.
I live out of state, right?
Right.
And this is the best care, or this is the option they've given us. The first question is, how are we going to do this? Where are we going to stay?
Yeah.
Right. And that's the basic need that we're looking to, at the very least, is giving you a place to stay so you can stay close to your child, right? And it's what we're discovering, it's much more than a house.
Yeah.
Because yes, there's the food and they appreciate the transportation, but I think more importantly is the connection we have with others. Because what we're finding is families that have a critical ill child, the isolation becomes very high.
Yeah.
People don't understand. My family, even though I talk to them, won't understand the journey I'm going through.
Right.
But when they make connections at the house, and whether the diagnosis is different, yours is there for cancer, mine's here for heart surgery, the diagnosis might be different, but the journey is very similar, right? The unknowns, the medications, the rounds, the sleepless nights, the what next, the how do I keep together? What about work? What about our pets? What about our family, our children, their schooling? All those things all take place under the roof of the house. And so that, again, a little bit more than just shelter, it's that emotional connection that becomes critical for our families, that they find that's more the life-saving piece.
Well, and you've shared stories with me where, the Smith family and the Jones family are staying there. One has a child that's critically ill in one capacity, one in another capacity, but over breakfast or over dinner, just sitting there, they create a bond, and oftentimes a bond that goes on for years, well after the fact, and they become a comfort source for each other.
Not unusual for families that have met at the house to stay connected 5, 7, 10 years out, right? And again, the diagnosis could vary, but if you think about it, you're really at one of the most stressful times in your life,
Sure.
and you found somebody to connect with, right? Intense experiences at the house, right? And I'll just share a couple with you.
Please.
Get a sense of, hey, what goes on. So I'll talk about, this is recently. One of the moms had a very, very fragile child at the hospital, and she comes to to breakfast, comes meals, sees another mom who has 3 or 4 children around there, and little ones. So there's 3-year-old, a 2-year-old, 1-year-old kind of thing, and she has one in the hospital.
Yeah.
And on one specific day, this mom shares that she lost her child, right? And she's sitting in the dining room, shares this with a staff or a volunteer, I forget. And this other mom with multiple children comes in here and sits next to them, and they're trying to get the breakfast, and one child starts acting out. This other mom with the multiple children just overwhelmed, and she basically asks, "Can you hold my child?" Right? So this mom who just lost a child asked to hold a newborn, right? A little one. She's emotional. So she tears up, right? Comforting and all that stuff, tearing up and all that stuff, helping out. Mom gets settled in, gives the child back, but she's tearing up not so much because of what she expresses later to our staff volunteer is she felt that it was her son's presence comforting her, right? So just a child that she just lost. She saw that interaction as a comforting, like, Mom, I'm good, right?
Yeah.
Intense, right? So that's the house again. It's just more than shelter. It's these stories that really allow people to process tough journey that they're going through. One other one I just wanted to share with you. Mom processes with me is I have a hard time prioritizing. She had postpartum depression, child in the intensive care unit. She says, with postpartum depression, she's like, I don't feel like sometimes I want to get up out of bed, right? I don't want to visit my child. I feel processed like guilt. Was it me genetically that my child is in intensive care? I'm a primary breadwinner, and I've used up all my vacation time. So I need to go back to work if I want income to come in.
Yeah.
My relationship with my spouse is stressed, is strained, and I got my son in the hospital. What she was challenged with, so which one's most important?
Right.
So she's thinking, hey, they say you should take care of yourself. Hear these in the airplanes.
Yeah.
Take care of yourself before you can help others. Should I do that? Should I focus on my relationship with my spouse so we can be stronger for our family?
Yeah.
Do I go back to work because we got no check coming in?
Absolutely.
Or do I visit my son who's in intensive care, right? Those are just a few things where I can't prioritize. Help me, which one is the most important? Those are the thousands of things that families kind of go through going through the house, right? And I share the stories because I think it's the stories more than the stats that I think your listeners can relate to, right? To just say, oh, yeah, Noel, how many have you served? Oh, 2,500 before we expanded. Now that we've expanded, we can serve 5,000 to 7,000 more guests at the house.
Wow.
Stats are important because people, yes, want to know the impact. What difference are you guys making in the community? But I think it's those family stories that people kind of get a sense of, oh, shoot, right? It is more just a roof over people's heads, right? And these journeys that the families go through, inevitably they share with our staff and volunteers. And it's not unusual for them to say, we're connected. We become very connected with your team because my family doesn't see the day-to-day, right? They hear what the message or the text I sent them.
Yeah.
You guys see me on my good days and bad days. You see when I'm exhausted. You see and feel where I feel like giving up.
Yeah.
So there's a bond that happens on the day-to-day grind that we experience, we see, we journey with our families. So it really is, for me, it's a humbling position to be in, that families actually share their journey with us. Again, it really is a humbling experience to share. I find it's a privilege. And at the end of the day, people ask me, how could you work in that environment? Right? Day in and day out, really? I don't know if I can do that.
Emotionally exhausting.
Right? A couple of things. One, it's the inspiration I learn from. I meet families and parents. I appreciate, so I'm not a parent. I've been happily married for, we're going to be 30 years. We're going to, in October.
Happy early 30th anniversary.
Yes. So thank you. I have a deep appreciation from parenthood, right? Just to say they're keeping it together and the challenges that we are in society. So I see the courage day in and day out from these families. I'm inspired by them keeping it together and all the responsibilities that they take in. And so yeah, on the one hand, it's draining, the intense things that they go through. On the other hand, what a blessing to be experiencing and be observing the courage, the strength, the faith, all that people have on a regular basis, right? That we don't see. Always a good reminder for me about the appreciation of health and life. My eyes open today. Not everybody's did, right? Also a reminder of at the store, these parents, when they go to a local store and shop or get something, you never know what people are going through, right?
Yeah.
So that's what I'm thinking. Hey, this mom's child might lose her child tonight. Does a person at the ice cream shop or at that Target know that person in line's got a heavy burden on their shoulder? Give them a break, right? So good reminder for me, John. So when you think about why I'm been in here for 14 years, it's those takeaways daily.
Well, and I don't mean to talk over you, but
Yeah.
as a leader, I imagine that your team, your staff,
Absolutely.
it's emotional for them as well. They develop relationships over a 1, 2, 5, 10-day period with these families.
Right.
How how are you able to coach and counsel your team
Mm.
so that they can, kind of keep the main thing and keep it together?
So to your point, see how my background, right,
Mhm.
in social work helps. My training in that, right, to just say, hey, all those things that you learned about how do you cope, how do you not project, how do you not make it personal, how your boundary
Mhm.
issues, right, those things. A couple of things, my background, but more importantly, we have we have family support services, and so this is a service that we just started where these are basically doctoral students. Those are going into counseling,
Yeah.
supervised by a clinician. They provide support to our families, our volunteers, and actually even to our staff. So we get the trainings on trauma-informed care.
Which is probably invaluable, not just to the families, but to your team as well.
Absolutely. So what they educate us was to say, not only are there families journeying, anyone who's encounters or works with these families are also exposed to trauma,
Right.
right? And so they talk about that, just and with the processing of, oh, you lost somebody with cancer. Hey, Noel, didn't your sister-in-law pass away of cancer? Didn't you experience if somebody announces somebody that you've known for years loses their child? How when you go home, do you mention anything to your parent,
Right.
to your spouse? Do you go as if nothing happened at the office today?
Mhm.
What do you do with those feelings, right? So yes, those are the things that we get support in, right? When you're talking about this is what we're exposed to on a daily basis. How do we cope? How do we maintain ourselves?
Yeah.
Can't help others, unless we're strong and we keep that. So that is the support that we do provide, not only to the families and guests staying at the house, but staff and volunteers to help us.
In our automotive organization, we added a position of chaplain to our dealerships.
Mm.
And, it wasn't to convert people to faith as much as it was human resources has, the boxes to check. They want to make sure that things are falling in order and, concerns or comments regarding business related items. But oftentimes people will arrive at the dealership or one of our stores with a heavy burden on their lives. Maybe it's something that they need to talk with someone about. Maybe they need to pray through it with somebody. And those invaluable conversations have made massive changes in people's lives. And we've been doing this chaplain thing for about, 5 months or so. And I have talked to dozens of our team members that have just said, I needed that. So
Mhm.
oftentimes your work and you want to be the best person that you can be for your teammates and your guests, but you can't be because you've got this big, hairy thing hanging over you. And for us, it's maybe personal items that are happening at home or what have you. But for you, your teammates have got all of that happen on a day to day at their personal level, and then they come into an environment where they are trying to be their best selves for people that are struggling.
You mentioned that we at the house, we have a non-denominational sanctuary,
Mhm.
right? So when you talk about the chaplain, in there, we actually have reading materials for the three major faiths. So there's, if you're Christian or Catholic, there's a Bible rosary in there, and we just have a rabbi that's given prayer shawl for those of the Jewish faith, and for those of the Muslim faith, we have that there. So we're a nonprofit, right? That we don't proselytize and
Right.
convert folks. But one of the things we do realize is that faith for folks, whatever faith that is, spirituality is very real, and people
Mhm.
find comfort and strength in their beliefs. And so to dedicate a space for that, a place. And what we also find is that space, you're going 1,000 miles per hour. You're either physically or mentally when you have a seriously ill child. I gotta keep all these things together. What they find is it's so helpful is when I call a timeout. Can I be still? Right. And a private place to be and be still in hospital is rare real estate. And hence, that's why we designated that space, the house, right? To just say, I need a timeout. I need to be still. I've been racing. And people ask, well, how long can they stay at a Ronald McDonald House, right? And it doesn't make sense for us to give a time frame. Because if I say 2 weeks or 2 months, if my child is still critically ill, they're still in the hospital 2 months, and next day, why does it make sense for me to leave? And so it is a case by case. So we've had families to stay there over a year. And you mentioned that, yes, near and far. And so these are families from Orange County, outside Riverside, Sunbury, LA County, out of state, out of the country, right? And so we really embrace that. But again, when you talk about that resource, the spirituality piece is very real, and families find strength in their faith. And so we recognize that and we honor that. And so there is a space at that.
Yeah, regardless of what faith you are, the ability to see something larger than yourself
Absolutely.
in the situation is so critical, and your ability to provide that sanctuary for your visitors is so essential. So I want to be mindful of your time, and I want to make sure that the team that is listening or the guests that are listening to this are able to say, okay, wow, I'm fascinated. What I casually knew about the Ronald McDonald House before, I now know a lot more about. How can they get involved in either a volunteer, a providing income, or what have you? Because at the end of the day, you're saying volunteerism and donations make up 80+% of what keeps you in business. So walk any listener through how they can be of impact.
Love to. One is consider volunteering at the house, and there's meal groups, right? So help prepare a meal for the family staying at the Ronald McDonald House. And if you're like not comfortable, well, I don't know how to make a meal myself. Well, you can bake, right? Because we have some crews that will bake cookies, like that, or do a healthy yogurt kind of thing for our families, or breakfast instead of just dinners. But meal groups are one great way, because you can come to the house, prepare meals for the families. You get to see them and take a tour of the house. For those who can't even make it to the house. For us, again, we just completed our expansion. So we went from 20 to 44 guest rooms, and it was over 2 years. It was supposed to be a 1-year gig. During the whole construction time, we never closed our doors. We provided families to stay at the hotel. So we weren't turning families away. But we just opened in mid-September, right? So come visit the house. And if you can't, other ways. So for us, now we have a bigger facility, clearly support, right? Increased costs in serving more families. And so we do have, for those who can't make it to the house for a meal, consider us in what we call a Happy Hugs Club. It's a minimum of $10 a month, recurring gifts program, monthly support to keep our doors open, keep our mission going. And again, as I observe from families, when you're in a good mood, you'd welcome a hug. When you're in a bad mood, you'd welcome a hug. And that's why we got the Happy Hugs, right? To just say, hey, we provide comfort in no matter what mood you're in. So people can support us that way. And I had one teenager recently ask me, says, hey, it actually was at our Walk for Kids recently. And she had asked, as a leader, what would you say to youth that are struggling? And her focus was on mental health and depression. What would you say to those who are struggling as far as mood and feeling depressed? And what came to mind for that, I'm not sure that's the correct answer, but I will share, was one way to lift your spirit is to serve others. And so if you shift off on what I don't get, I don't like, I don't, and focus on how I can lift the weight of others, I've found for me personally, right, really lifts my spirits. And so to your listeners, I would share service to others. We have a unique opportunity because, yes, you will be able to come into a house, or literally a house. You can actually serve meals for our families and interact with them. And so rare opportunities, not all nonprofits really give you that opportunity.
For sure.
So we do. And so that's another way, right? What do I do next? Yes, come volunteer and visit us. Love to. We've just reopened our doors, and that's why I take these opportunities to share with people. Our doors are open. Come, help support us, help families that we're serving.
Yeah, and for those that are listening, if you have not had the honor of seeing the all-new remodeled Ronald McDonald House right here in Orange County, it is spectacular. And the job that you and your team have done, are doing, will be doing is absolutely second to none. And you're awestruck when you walk in there for the first time. It's amazing. And so I would encourage anybody to be a volunteer, to take a tour, to be involved in the HUG program, what have you, because what you are doing is so impactful to the community and so changing lives. And I mean, right down to, my friend Charles Antis, the reason why I'm exposed to rocking the socks is his twins were in critical care when they were young newborns. And it's been a big part of his life purpose to make sure that people know about the Ronald McDonald House. And he has been such a huge advocate for you and all that you guys do. And he's impacted my life and getting to know him. And right down to, I mean, and I get emotional with it talking about one of our teammates just last month. That, his brother's child was having to go for a serious surgery. They lived in Nevada. The place that they were going is in the Bay Area. And you were able to arrange a scenario where their family was able to stay and they were really in a tough spot. And it made such a massive impact on their family. And it's real. And oftentimes, until you see it, until you touch it, until it's right in front of you, you don't see it. And obviously you guys see it on the day-to-day. But for those that are listening, oftentimes we're one family member away, one friend member away from hearing a story like this, and you feel the impact that your team has been able to make. It's gratifying. And from me to you, from our team to you, we are so grateful to be able to play a small role in donating to your cause. And I look forward to a next team building activity where we can be making meals and getting our team over there, because that's something that we really want to prioritize. So thank you for all that you do.
John, it's such a privilege because you are legit. And when I had shared right in the beginning, like you are such a force for good. And if there's anything I walk away in the opportunities that this charity has given me is that I get to connect and meet people like yourself, like Charles Antis and like Wing Lam, that are force for good in the community. And legitimately, right, that yes, we have this podcast and yes, you do these, but it's in the background, that how you carry yourself day in and day out, and how you truly, outside of the marketing and the front facing, down at your core, your service, and you look to make an impact in the community. And I just wanted to share what a privilege for me to get to meet you and know you as a person and you're the character that you are and that you represent. So I appreciate that. And again, our charity is blessed to have the partnership and the support of you and your company.
Well, and it's our teammates giving to us. And, at the end of the day, I always say it's God's business. It's my job to take care of his business and steer in a direction that he feels it necessary. And so hopefully, these podcasts, identifying leaders that are making differences in people's lives and our teammates' lives, it's really all about, we're only on this earth for a short period of time. And when I see your story that I thought I knew, I know so much more now. And I'm so looking forward to everybody listening to what you were able to share and the impact that you and your team are making on so many lives, one at a time, through the major impact of the Ronald McDonald House. Noel, thank you so much for taking time out of your busy schedule. So grateful for you.
Appreciate the opportunity.
Thank you. Thank you so much for listening to this episode of the Driven Leader podcast. And we were speaking with a true driven leader, a person of influence, Noel Burcelis, the person that runs the Ronald McDonald House here in Orange County. And what an amazing story. Someone that grew up in a rough environment, became a social worker, have done so much good for communities, and ended up now in a 14-year career at the Ronald McDonald House, a place that changes lives and a place where you're serving people that are going through such a difficult time. I learned a lot about the Ronald McDonald House and what they do and how they serve, but I hope you did as well. And if you like what you heard in this exchange, please don't forget to like, share, subscribe so that we can get this information on to as many people as possible. Thanks for listening to the Driven Leader podcast, and make it a great day.